Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this panel. And I'm grateful, thrilled, honored to have today Anabel Jensen and Ofer Mendelevitch. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah.
Great. For this panel. And the subject, the topic of this panel, artificial intelligence in education, is quite trendy. We were discussing with Anabel and Ofer just a few minutes ago. It's trendy these days. And today we will share how artificial intelligence impacts actually our life as parents, as teachers, as students, and also how emotional intelligence can support us in using artificial intelligence and the potential of artificial intelligence at the very best. My name is Ilaria Boffa. I'm Education and Community Manager at 6 Seconds Europe. And again, welcome Anabel and Ofer. I'd like you to introduce yourselves. So introducing, just saying a few words about you, so our audience can also appreciate this.
I'll jump in. Hi, I'm Anabel. Many of you know me, and I send hugs to everybody, virtual hugs to everybody, and all my love. And I would say that I'm not an expert on this topic, but I am fascinated by the possibilities of artificial intelligence. I would love to have a personal tutor on my shoulder, feeding me all the latest information about neuroscience or emotional intelligence so that I could be putting it into my thoughts and advice on a regular basis. But I'm also a little worried about, do I want that much intrusion in terms of privacy? And so I actually asked one of my favorite men on the earth to join us, because he actually does know something about AI. And so Ofer is here. Ofer, please say a few words about yourself. I know you won't brag, but I'll do that for you.
Thank you, Anabel. Wow, how can I follow that recommendation? But thank you. No, I'm very happy to be here, and thanks everybody for joining us. Yes, that's been my world, AI, for about the last, probably 2 decades, before it became so popular too. So if you know GPT-4, which is very famous, I started working on GPT when it was version 2, but I did a lot of work in AI before that, and I've seen a lot of the trajectory of how it evolved over the years. And yeah, would really be interested to hear all your questions, and looking forward to some of the discussion today. And I wanted to start, actually go through just a few slides before we go into the questions that Anabel and I created and prepared for today. And I'll start by telling people about one of the most important problems in AI today, which is this thing called hallucinations. And you probably have heard this term, when ChatGPT can hallucinate and give you the wrong answer. And this is one of my favorite examples. I asked ChatGPT if Will Smith ever hit anyone, and I hope all of you know this from 2022, what happened in the Oscars. But if you don't, right, ChatGPT says that Will Smith is a super nice guy, and never was found to be doing anything aggressive or anything like this. And then you see what happened in the Oscars, and that that's not true. So that's when an LM hallucinates, and there's a lot of reasons why. And so that's one of the interesting things, and I think we'll talk about this later on, probably as well, is how do hallucinations impact the trade-off between using this tool appropriately, but how do we make sure that what it tells us is actually correct? This is an important piece of information. And it turns out not all the LLMs, people mostly know this one called GPT-4, but not all of them hallucinate at the same rate. So there's ways to measure that that we can do.
Yeah.
So actually,
Now,
I have a question about that. So in my reading, because I've been trying to become more knowledgeable about AI, I read someplace where it's not up to date past 2021. So how fast will it get up to date?
So that's true. And this example is based on the 2021 example, but they keep updating this. So every company, we talk about OpenAI a lot, but there's also Google with Gemini, and a lot of other options, Anthropic AI and others. GPT-4, for example, now is up to date until beginning of 2023. So they keep updating this regularly. It's never gonna be the news of yesterday, but usually it'll be they try to keep it more and more up to date, and it just depends on the company.
Okay. And as it gets more and more sophisticated, that probably will be true as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
And let me ask the audience and you, Ofer and Anabel, then, because we are already into these acronyms, ChatGPT, and all these programs for artificial intelligence. But I really like to read in the chat, what is your idea of artificial intelligence? A shorter definition of artificial intelligence and maybe a metaphor. So please type in the chat, because, very often we hear ChatGPT. Have you all used ChatGPT or other kind of generative AI programs, models, or something? And if your kid came home and asked, but what's artificial intelligence? What would you say? And what image maybe could you use? So Anabel and Ofer.
In their answers as well. And that leads us to Ofer's next slide.
This leads to this slide. So Anabel and I actually talked about this, but I would say, before I explain these images, Anabel and I think we try to capture in an image what AI would, and I think this is more of an emotional response of what we think it'll impact the world or whatever, as opposed to definition. So let's go through this, and then I'll try to answer a definition, and Anabel, I can do that, both of us, of how we think we define it. But Anabel, why don't you go first? What does AI, how do you think about it in terms of an image and a couple words about it?
Well, I was really thinking that for all intents and purposes, for me, it was a bridge between the machine, the computer, the algorithms, the math, the coding, and, what it is that I needed in order to operate in the world. So I saw it as a bridge between myself and all that knowledge out there.
Great. And for me, a lot of people ask me always, and maybe some of you might want to ask a version of that question today, about would AI kill us all and destroy the world and dangerous. And as a kid, I really liked the Gremlins movie. So I asked actually DALL-E, which is an image generation AI, to generate this image, which to me reflects what I have in my head. Is they're really cute right now. It's really helpful, but it could also, if you put a little water on it, it becomes kind of evil and dangerous. And that to me is that sort of trade-off that people are thinking about all the time today. And the quote
Ofer,
is
I don't remember how to spell DALL-E, that I think takes the name from the painter DALL-E.
Yeah.
I think, but I don't remember. So I wanted to type this in the chat. Is D-A or D-U-L-L-E?
It's called D-A-L-L-E. I'm typing it here right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
For people, it's an amazing program that we are also using at 6.
Yeah, DALL-E is wonderful. You can type what you want, and he gives you an image in a few minutes. And the images, as you can see, can be quite wonderful. And this took me about all of 1 minute to do. It's not like
that's right. I was sitting there and he made it happen. Well, Ofer, and looking at your image, and it's either powerful or it can be evil. There were a couple of people that I read, and they had some very interesting quotes. One of them was Stephen Hawking, and the other was Sam Altman. And they were both talking about how the fact this was probably the most wonderful invention in the world, but at the same time, it would probably destroy the world. It would be the end of the world. And so do you feel like it will be the end of the world?
No, I don't. And let me actually give a broader statement about this. Yes, there is. I mean, you mentioned Sam Altman and others. There's also a big fight between the kind of founders of modern AI. There's Yann LeCun, and there's Jeff Hinton, Andrew Ng, and a bunch of really prominent figures that have started this conversation about a year ago.
Elon Musk and Larry Page are in this argument as well, right?
Yeah. And so I think my personal opinion, then no, this AI that we have today will not destroy the world. Like, could we develop an AI that will destroy the world later on as a society? Sure, we can. But this one is not going to do that. What I think it could do is it could, if misused, could create a lot of problems. The same way social networks create a lot of problems for us, for example, right? Maybe influenced in elections, maybe created silos of opinions around the world that everybody reads only what they want to read and the opinions there. So that's, to me, the problem that social networks created. AI, for example, could be used to create wonderful images like this, or could be used to create blog posts very quickly, or could be used to create essays and a bunch of different things much more quickly and much more efficiently on topics you probably don't know anything about yet, and you can get a head
It's
start
about
with.
us. Yeah.
But it could also be used to create ads and misinformation and a bunch of other stuff more quickly than they can do today. So it's an accelerator for the content it can generate, for good or for bad. And to me, the question is, are we strong enough as a society? Can we use this effectively in a positive way as opposed to in a negative way?
Right. Well, then I
It's all
think that
about us.
yes,
It's all
it
about
brings
us.
up,
It's all about humans.
yeah, it's all about humans, and that brings up the importance, I think, of are we going to introduce emotional intelligence into it in some way, shape, or form? Because I don't think it has that right now. You know, for example, I went online and I said to it, okay, I'm grieving for a friend and who just died, a 60-year-old, not, she wasn't 60-year-old, though the friendship was 60 years old. So what should I do? And it came up with some things. I should write a letter. I should talk to people who know her. I should, create a picture of art, but it didn't offer to hug me as my real friends did. Yes. So I would like to see us make sure that we build emotional intelligence into it. Yeah.
And it's
Exactly. And this
interesting.
is,
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, sorry, I was just saying that this is also what I wanted to ask you, and also ask you about your experiment and your project, but also how emotions and emotional intelligence can support the development or the exploitation of the usage of artificial intelligence in a good way, as you, Ofer, were saying previously.
So
Yeah,
when
and
I went to Ofer and asked him to participate with me, he came up with this amazing idea. So Ofer, I'm going to let you, as the expert, explain this idea.
okay, so this is my next slide, which is, and let me also let's put a pin in emotional intelligence in a minute. But knowing Anabel for many years, she's been, many of you know her too. Like, she's amazing, she's awesome. She's written so much about emotional intelligence. She's spoken so much about emotional intelligence. And when we started talking about doing this panel together, after a few days, it hit me that what I'm going to show you now is exactly what we needed to do. And because I'm in this space and my company does demos like the demo I'm going to show you now, it took me all by like one day to put this together after Anabel sent me all of her recent book materials and everything like this. So what I'm going to show you now is a demo I created called Ask Anabel. Okay, so what happens here is it's like ChatGPT, but and can answer questions based on all the writings of Anabel and all the talks that she did and everything like this. And this is a screenshot, but I can actually go to the live version and you can try it on yourself. It's called askanabel.demo. You can see here is the URL, and I can post it later on too. But you can ask, like, why is emotional intelligence important? And what happens here is it first retrieves all the relevant information from all of the documents and the presentations and everything like this. And you can see some from her website, some from a chapter, a book, whatever is relevant. And it then, kind of creates a response to the question of why is emotional intelligence important based on this thing. And you can ask Actually, Ilaria, do you have a favorite question you want me to ask? Let's do this live.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Well, how did you use emotional intelligence, Annabelle, to shape your noble goal?
Let's see what it does.
Let's see what it says. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you say, yeah, I'm not sure it's perfect, and doing a live demo was kind of dangerous, but let's see nevertheless what happens.
Maybe
Um,
there's your noble goal somewhere.
To shape a noble goal, I integrated emotional intelligence by deploying the CLEAR method alongside the traditional SMART goals framework. Is that something,
Nice.
Annabelle, you would do?
Well, actually, I have 2 blogs about that. So it pulled that information out from the
And you can
blog.
see
So
it
I think
gives
that's
you
really
see, it
fascinating.
gives
Yeah.
you a reference to where it
Yeah.
found your answers and kind of highlights them, which is really nice. Now, because there's so many people from around the world here, I want to also show you that you can actually also change the language of the response to some other language. So, for example, for you, Ilaria, right? So you'll tell me if
Yeah.
this is correct or not, because I can't read Italian, but it now generates the same response, but we'll try to do it in Italian, right? Let's
Amazing.
see. As you
Oh, and
notice,
look, it tells you how much time it's taking. That's fascinating. Look.
yeah,
Great.
so
Ho utilizzato l'intelligenza emotiva per plasmare il mio obiettivo nobile. Yes, it's perfect. Perfect translation.
So,
Amazing.
Ilaria, we Noah celebrated my birthday and invited about 20 or so people to her house. And so Ofer put this up as sort of a little experiment. And so we went around the room and people asked me a question and then I answered it. And then we looked to see what she would say. Okay, what AI would respond. So it was a
Excellent.
wonderful, fun activity and we really enjoyed it. I'm fascinated by this whole project, Ofer.
yeah, so
Amazing.
I'll put it here in the chat if people want to try it out later. I'm really excited about this just because this is like, you know, we can all ask Annabelle for advice like any time of the day now. So it's great.
Amazing. Amazing.
So that's I think in terms of slides, that's it. So maybe I'll stop sharing and you know, would love to continue the conversation
Yeah,
from there.
my question was, how can we use emotional intelligence EQ to get the best from artificial intelligence? Just a few hints maybe for people. Emotions, the important, well, what you shared, Ofer, and what you asked, Annabelle, will this artificial intelligence will destroy the world? How do we feel about this? And so how can we use our emotional intelligence?
Well, I think one thing that AI can actually do for us and do already for us would be to increase our self-awareness. So for me, reflection is the ability by which I'm going to make sense of my world. And so I could go to AI and say, okay, ask me some questions to check up on my day to see how valuable it was. And did I do the things that I set up to do for myself on a regular basis? And it would ask me, well, what did you accomplish today? I'm assuming that's what it would ask me. Or what did you do to make somebody laugh? Or what did you do to make somebody feel supported? Or did you help somebody solve a problem? It would help me reflect on my day. And so I think that's one very specific way right now it could be useful, is that reflection part.
Yeah, and I want to say a couple things. One is to get on the previous point I made is it depends on how you use it. And I think, you know, Annabelle, you mentioned earlier that you used it in a certain way and it didn't hug you, but it's not trained to hug yet.
No,
But
it's
it
not.
could
Yeah.
be, but it could be. So I think the focus of generating, and I'm going to get a little technical here just to explain my point, but these large language models, they're called the ChatGPT of the world, they've been trained on a large, massive data set that includes Wikipedia and Reddit and a bunch of stuff. And there was no focus on empathy or social emotional intelligence at all. It's like whatever the web had, that's what it's going to be. Now, there are ways to use ChatGPT in a different way. For example, you can tell it, as a socially emotional adapt person, please answer this question. It'll probably give you a little bit of flavors. This is called prompting, where you can actually ask it to behave in a certain way. In a lot of ways it would, but again, based on whatever was in the data set it was trained on. But I did want to share something actually really interesting that I researched for this talk. There's an initiative, it's not ready yet, by a company called Stability AI, called Open Empathic. And I'm going to read out of my phone here what it is so you guys can hear it directly. Open Empathic aims to equip open source AI system with empathy and emotional intelligence.
Ah,
We hope that methods and tools developed within the framework of this project, together with a community of researchers and technology enthusiasts, will revolutionize the way AI interacts with and supports humans in various domains. In an increasingly AI-driven world, it is of paramount importance that AI systems possess emotional intelligence to understand and respond to human emotions. As AI plays an ever-expanding role in our daily lives, ranging from education to healthcare, elderly care, and commercial contexts, it becomes vital to prioritize the well-being and emotional intelligence of AI-human interactions. And I think that reflects all that we talked about here about the importance. And the reason I'm mentioning this is there are people already working on it. So it's not there yet, but I would expect that in 2 years, with enough focus and with enough, first of all, I'm really amazed and inspired by the fact that people realize this too, who are not emotional intelligence experts like people on this call, but people around the world realize that emotional intelligence is important, and the current ChatGPT is not emotionally intelligent. And yeah, let's put some work into this.
That's really interesting. And actually, Ofer, that actually gives me hope, because if you can build some emotional intelligence into the system, can you also then build something that I'm very concerned about? And this is my noble goal. So my noble goal says to teach accountability and compassion so that ethical decisions will abound. So if we can build emotional intelligence in, can we also build ethics in as well?
Absolutely.
I think to some extent, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ofer.
I mean, I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I think if we can define, so these models are based on statistics and learning. So if we can define in a smart way how this would work, then yes. I'm encouraged by the fact, Anabel, that a lot of the progress in the last couple of years that led to ChatGPT was actually, and again, being technical a little bit, there's something called reinforcement learning from human feedback. So a lot of what happened between GPT-3 and GPT-4 was the introduction of that technique, which essentially asked humans to rate the relevance of a response of ChatGPT to a question. And that got it to a high level of quality. But I can imagine that if we now enroll a lot of people and ask them to judge the emotional intelligence of the response or other factors like you said, compassion and others, then I think it should be able to do the same thing and integrate more of the emotional intelligence into that through that mechanism.
Right. So it's going to take
Absolutely.
experts who know something and then evaluate the responses and then make them better and better. Yes.
Yes. And it'll make the LLM better and better over time. Yes.
Right. It'll make the responses better and better over time. So, Ofer, we have a couple of questions over here in the chat box that
right.
I don't know that I know the answers to, but maybe you know the answers to. So,
which ones should I start? Let me look. I'm sorry.
yeah. So the first one up there is how reliable is AI when it comes to questions on psychological issues? So I think I can answer that, which is it would be fairly reliable depending on which chat box you're, because it's looking at all the data that exists out there in the world. So if you went in and asked it about autism and what are the symptoms and what are treatments and et cetera, I think it'd give you a lot of data and a lot of specific information. You couldn't answer a question about a specific student because it wouldn't have that particular data and information. It would have to generalize, right?
Correct. So generally on any topic you choose, whether it's psychological issues or anything else, it has a vast amount of knowledge. Again, as you said, limited to, let's say, early 2023. And it can answer based on knowledge. But again, remember, and I'm reminding everybody here, there are hallucinations. So the response could be wrong. And that's a little bit the tricky part. Now, GPT-4 and the recently launched Gemini, people say we haven't tested it yet, but like those seem to be really good in terms of not hallucinating, but they still do to some extent sometimes. And so to be able to give you good responses, but you always have to keep kind of a little bit of a critical eye on it to see if it actually makes sense.
If it makes any
And
sense.
I also, yeah, and I also think that it's very important that recently this year, in 2023, UNESCO and recently the European Union decided to regulate artificial intelligence. UNESCO published guidelines on artificial intelligence in education and research, and the European community decided for the first continent doing this to regulate artificial intelligence in different domains, because as we are discussing, probably it's also important to assess risks and opportunities, and especially in education with students and kids, but also for teachers and parents to have boundaries or to respect and keep into account privacy, or in any case, all the possible, again, risks that we should consider. Critical thinking and ethics is always, they should be our lighthouses, right, in the night. And so, and this is also emotional intelligence, right?
Yes, and ChatGPT is very useful in sort of like a chat interaction. So, for example, to go back to the psychological issue question, like I could start asking, not like Anabel said, not about a particular student, but I can say, my student did this and this and this and this behavior in a classroom. What would you consider from a psychological problem, some of the issues involved, and how would you deal with them? And ChatGPT will give you some response. And then you can say, yeah, but I want to deal with this more. Maybe the response is old school, because remember, Wikipedia and Reddit and the web might have also like, I'll hit them with a belt, like, or like, 50, 100 years ago kind of things, right? So you'd say, no, 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 I'm looking for something with more empathy and emotional intelligence and compassion. Can you suggest something else? And it will. So if it gives you a response you don't like and you think is wrong for your context, you can guide it further and give it, instructions, and it'll give you a different response based on what you guided it for. So the conversation path of multiple question, answer, responses, guidance is actually really, really helpful as you use this tool.
Absolutely.
Ilaria, I wanted to respond to your UNESCO comment, which I think that was great that they're concerned, but I'm wondering if they aren't going to be always so far behind. So, they've asked for nations to create AI curriculums for their teachers so that they have some guidelines. But there's only been 11 nations or 11 countries that have actually ended up doing this.
Of course.
And certainly, New York City 2 years ago banned Chat GPT, and now they've reopened it up again. They've changed their mind because they see probably the potential that exists there. But I think that unless we get very busy here, we're going to be behind. It will be too late because we're so far behind Chat GPT or any of the other mechanisms. Yeah.
Yeah, and one more point about using it for education. So we talked about this question was about how do I deal with a kid in a classroom kind of situation, right? But I think I'd like to cover between the three of us here on the panel a little bit of the broader question here is like, and a lot of people ask me that, like, how should I use this tool if I'm a teacher, for example? Right? Really, really great question. And I think this is one way is I have a problem in a classroom and I want to understand how to deal with it. But there's a lot of other ways that I want to highlight, in my opinion, right? I'm not a teacher, I'm married to one, and I know a lot of teachers, but
and a great one, and a great one.
A great one and an awesome one. But I think that in my mind, and this applies to other topics, but I'm going to focus on education. I think that ChatGPT has a vast amount of knowledge. Like it hallucinates sometimes, it's not perfect, but it gives you access to stuff that you would not even know sometimes where to find. And we used to be like Googling stuff around, and it's tedious, and you get in these red holes of places, and you have to click on every place and read all the stuff. It's really good at finding information that you want really quickly from anywhere else that it exists. And so, for example, one of the things that people ask me is like, okay, so how do I, as a teacher, how do I prevent my kids from using ChatGPT to provide answers to tests or homework? Well, my viewpoint, may be controversial, but my viewpoint would be you don't, right? They will do it. However, I mean, whatever ban or mechanism you're going to try to block it, they'll figure out a way. Soon it'll be on their watch, on their Apple Watch. It'll be somewhere else. It'll be in their ear. It'll be in their Discord server. It'll be anywhere. And so instead, what I would think is you want to do is you want to figure out a way to change how we teach kids in a way that embraces this tool and still is able to, get them to whatever education goals you have, academic and non-academic, of course, right? And it's not only about academics. A lot of people think about the tests, but it's not just that. Whatever you want to teach them. And that's why I think project-based learning becomes kind of more prominent now, because it's not just about answering a particular question. It's about thinking and doing and things of that nature.
So Ofer, I'd really like to follow up on that, because I 100% agree with you. So I don't find your answer controversial at all. But and I think one of the ways to do that is to actually open it up to the students and say, okay, get your first response for this essay question from ChatGPT, and then see what you can do about making it better, more interesting, more specific, more related to your life, more personal, more funny, more whatever. Right. I mean, I think there are so many doors that you can open that would be fun and exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it'll be a life skill.
Ask you both.
Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. Sorry, probably you are answering my question.
I think it's going to be a life skill to teach kids how to use ChatGPT or whatever form of it in their future, because it will be integrated in every application and every tool that we will use.
Right.
I think it's a matter also of changing, sorry, Anabel, we are moving away from certain competencies, probably from certain skills. I'm making an example. My son is 16, and till 3 years ago, when I asked him, well, look for something into the dictionary, a word, the meaning of the word, he wasn't able to do it. Because for him, looking for a word, the meaning of a word, was only Googling. So they don't use the dictionary in school. They didn't use it. Now in high school, he is using it again. But my son, he wasn't even able to say, is the M coming before the N or after? Because in his mind, it didn't need that information. You know what I mean? So even the ability to search for information has changed, I believe. So probably their skills are really transforming into something different. They are acquiring different kind of abilities and probably losing some others. Maybe they are not relevant, maybe yes, it depends. So I think that maybe also monitoring the evolution of this transformation is relevant. What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely do. And soon you won't be typing your questions in. You're going to be saying them out loud anyway, and your spelling won't matter. Your spelling won't matter. One of the things that I think that AI can do for us is feed curiosity, however. And so I actually currently think children enter school as kindergartners as these giant question marks. They just got question after question after question after question. And by the time they leave 12th grade, I think they've all turned into periods instead, So AI can feed their curiosity in a way that will be unique and wonderful for every child who's got an interest in dinosaurs or airplanes or native plants to entice the monarch butterflies. Whatever it is that you care about, you can find out so much more information. And so teachers can use it to feed kids' curiosity.
Absolutely. And we haven't even started talking about images and videos that will soon be generated, right?
Oh,
So talk
I
about
think that
creativity.
part really exciting. So can they come? So can AI create a vlog? A virtual blog, Ofer?
So
Well,
even
sorry,
even
there's a
more than that,
person in the chat. A person in the
yeah.
chat asked exactly this. Will AI generate a robot, for example, to conduct this webinar like that we are having now, or a vlog or something else? Is this possible?
So let me go in sequence, right? Like images is, as you've seen, DALL-E 3 is really good and it'll continue to improve. I think this area is very good right now. We'll continue to improve. There are some problems. For example, if you try DALL-E, you will see, and others, there's other tools like that, like Midjourney and others. You'll see that if you ask it to write text, sometimes it'll write the wrong text, or sometimes it'll have humans that have 6 fingers and things like this. There's some hallucinations images, but those are, for the most part, it works really well and is very good so far, much better than it was a year ago. Generating videos is really, really just starting. So you can generate 4 or 5 second videos, kinds of things, and say, please generate a video that shows like a horse running in the prairie or something, and it'll generate something like that. But it's almost like GPT-1 level. It's got to evolve further. But I absolutely think that it will come. That day will come where we will have 10-minute movies or short clips coming that a director might say, please generate according to the script, and it will generate something. And it won't be perfect. And then the director can say, okay, change this scene to do this and this and this, and it'll happen this way. And I think that's why Hollywood was very concerned in the last years.
Exactly. Actors were all on
For a
strike
good reason.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
again, remember, this is, I think I don't know much about Hollywood and the business and their particular situation financially about the compensation, but I would say you can imagine a world where the skill set you now need is to write the script, to manage it properly, make sure that it's interesting enough, because ChatGPT will write something, a baseline, like a blog post, but you'll have to tweak it and change it. And the director will have to, so the skill set of making things that are interesting and get human attention and have the right emotions involved in them will still be something I think that for a long time we will control. It'll just be, the process will be cheaper and faster, right?
Well, Ofer, I think this again is very important for education and for teachers, because the brain is geared to respond. 50% of the brain is geared to respond to visual images.
Yeah.
To visual images. So if teachers or kids could produce these for themselves much faster. In fact, one new strategy that many experts are recommending is that when you're lecturing and you're talking about bugs and metamorphosis or whatever it is, the kids are actually drawing those pictures and trying to create them, because they will then retain the concept much better than trying to just write down the words. So you create the visual image. So I can think that it would be great fun. Yeah. Okay. Here's one of my favorite books, Pride and Prejudice, for example. Okay. So I would feed it information about Darcy and about Elizabeth, and then see what kind of interesting characters got created out of that. Wouldn't that be fun? And then somebody else does the same thing in class, and then we bring them and compare them and talk about why theirs is better and mine isn't, or whatever. I just think so many possibilities are open there for us to do really fascinating things.
And probably it is also for this reason that is so important to integrate social and emotional learning into schools, because the application of artificial intelligence are impacted by the way we will use, as we said, right? So having an approach that is ethical and that is empathic, compassionate, and tolerant will change also our approach, or will shape our approach to how to use these tools. Uh, and so our kids, our students, and the teachers and parents who are, I can tell you, a lot of parents are very worried these days. Probably you live in the Bay Area, you live in California, but I think here in Europe and other countries, and I'm sure here there are parents who are a little bit scared because already they see their kids that maybe they are not so into the school and studying, and so they feel that maybe they will use this in the wrong way without putting too much effort, commitment, and critical thinking. So what are, for example, the recommendations for parents and for teachers and students in using artificial intelligence that we can give them?
Well, I think in some ways this even goes back farther than emotional intelligence, although at the 6 seconds framework, we include morality and ethics as a piece and a part because of our noble goal. And as we look at noble goals and we try to decide whether or not they are important for the world, or should the world be looking at this particular cause, and we have a guideline for making a judgment about that. But for me, then it's about building this into the system. We need a mechanism for ethical behavior, just as we need a system for emotional behavior to be built into the system. And as Ofer was saying, you probably can do emotions, so then we should be able to do ethical behaviors as well.
Yeah, I think that the challenge will be to define how we guide the AI training process towards those goals. And so I haven't thought enough about this to right here give the kind of the exact solution, but my feeling is that through collecting human feedback the same way it was done in current technologies, and using that human and making that human feedback be focused on compassion and ethics and things like this, having the humans that provide this feedback be guided to provide their response based on that, we can guide these language models to be more ethical, to be more, excuse me, more compassionate and empathic. And I think it's a challenge that's still ahead of us as a society, but I think it's, as you said, Ilaria, very important, because it's really about bias. This tool will be everywhere, and I want it to be predisposed, so to speak, to be good and not to be, to be ethical, to do the right thing for, especially for kids and in an education context.
Of course, keeping in mind that they are tools. So as all the tools, we are the owner of tools. We can decide how to use it, right?
Yes. Exactly.
Well, one of the things that isn't happening that probably should be happening is that teachers in current programs right now are not getting lessons on AI and how to use it and what to look for and how to be careful and
Exactly.
what kind of questions to ask. That isn't even in the agenda of teacher training programs at this particular point in time. So that needs to happen.
Yeah,
and we can do something, Anabel, with our self-science and maybe our EQ Educator program. Why not, right?
Yes.
And I want to also, it makes me think that I want to encourage everybody here and tell your friends. I think, the AI community is developing the next generation, and they're influenced by a lot of different, pulling strings. They want it to be better, higher quality, do all these kind of things. I think we should all try to tell them, go on social media, mention that we want empathy, we want social emotional learning to be integrated, especially for education and for kids. Because I think if people hear this, the governments who are now starting to regulate AI, the companies who are developing these new models, I think we want to have a voice that says that we would like you to do this because it's important in education, especially in education, if not in a broader context.
Absolutely.
Well, I certainly remember being in a college classroom. Now, this would have been 1,000 years ago, because you all know that I'm very old. But one of the professors' advice to all of us is we're reading articles and deciding, which one is the right article. It's giving me research and data. And her advice was, well, you always look for a piece of preponderance. Where's the biggest amount of data? So don't we want to teach people to do that with AI as well, or teach AI to do that for us, so that if 99.9% of the information is saying this, then we can ignore the 0.1% that's saying something else.
Well,
Absolutely.
if I understand what you're saying, I mean, that could be dangerous. Like, what if that 0.1% correct answer?
Well, but would you think that's the probability? Would you think there was to be a probability that that 0.1% person is the right answer? That, I mean, I think that's fascinating, but
For the most part, usually no. Statistics tell us that's not incorrect. But you know what happens today is there's misinformation, and let's say 99.9% of a certain area in the world here's only this information because that's the only information they're being fed. They will all believe that that's the right information, even if it's wrong. So,
True. And if you think of totalitarianism, I mean, you know, when if a group of people, the mass, is considering something as good, it doesn't mean that it is, right? So
yes.
it can be really a question mark. Absolutely true.
Yeah, and there
okay.
could be a lot of opinions too that
Yeah.
are all valid. And so if one of them is higher than the other, would the other one go away? So I think we want to have some diversity of information. And I think again, as I kind of mentioned, ChatGPT is good at that today because you can guide it towards one or the other directions. If you know there's another opinion, you can say, no, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in that. It'll probably then pull what you ask it to pull from its kind of vast knowledge base, which is actually really useful.
Right. So you're asking us to make sure that it's not just public opinion that is being reflected, but that we look at scientific opinion and et cetera, right? In terms of
Yeah,
making,
again, just to be cynical about scientific opinion, but scientific opinion has proven in the last 3 years also to not be always correct, right? There's famous studies that were published. I heard about a few, but the one I remember was in behavioral economics, where they looked at some of the numbers and found that there's some question marks about the validity of the studies. So I know we've all been trained to know that scientific is
yeah,
like
right.
reviewed and should be correct for the most part. But even in medicine, you find that sometimes people repeat a study that was done 30 years ago on a drug and can repeat the results, and it's can prove that it's working. So it's a complicated topic, Anabel. I understand where you're trying to go to, but I think generally what I would characterize as my viewpoint on this is like, I think it's okay that these large language models learn from all the opinions around the world. But the guidance I was talking about is just guidance toward the style of response and sort of the way it responds, as opposed to shutting out. So shutting out being aggressive and obnoxious to me is okay when it responds. I'd rather have it be compassionate and nice and informative, as opposed to shutting out a flow of information, which has, I think we all as society need to speak about a little bit more before we
Yeah.
decide on that.
Well,
It's
now I'm
dangerous.
going to ask a question that perhaps there's, so recently in Silicon Valley, Ofer, there was this big mess about Elizabeth Holmes and she had this technology and she fooled. I don't know. You're exactly right. She fooled an immense amount of population so that she amassed a personal income of something like $4.5 billion. Anyway, it was a lot. Would
Yeah.
GPT-4 have detected that she was wrong?
Nope, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's not. That's what I'm saying. It's you asked me if it's gonna kill the world. Like the question number one, we talked about it. It's Let me actually. I'm sorry. I'll take a step back. Ilaria, you asked me to define what the AI is, and I'll define what it is now. Okay.
Okay.
I've seen as a kid Battlestar Galactica and all the movies. I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've seen all the, robots will kill us all things. I don't think we're there yet, and I'll tell you why. Essentially, what happens in the AI we have today, like ChatGPT, is it is fed a lot of text information from a lot of different sources like Wikipedia, Reddit, online forums, books, and lots of different things. And it processes, it sort of learns from this information. So what that means is that it's not like this question you asked Annabelle about Elizabeth Holmes. I think it's a lot of people were fooled by her because she was a very convincing person, and there's no if you asked anybody before it was proven that technology of Theranos didn't work, if you took, 6 months before that came out, there was proof that it didn't work. If you ask anybody based on public knowledge, I thought some people say that's impossible, and some people say, yeah, no, I think it might be an innovation that's waiting to happen. And so I don't think there's a truthful answer. In this case, my understanding from reading the book is the answer came from people inside who knew that it didn't work, because in the lab it showed that it didn't work and it was hidden from investors and from others. But I think that's where that knowledge will not be in the possession of ChatGPT, because it's not out there in the public. If you ask it now, there's many books about it, so it probably will know. But that's
Then
after
it
the
would
fact.
probably
Right?
know. Yeah, it would have been the moment in time. Well, we do know that AI, for example, Sherilyn and I just wrote a book on hot cognition about how you stimulate the brain. So it could now generate then a lesson plan that included all those elements. So these are things teachers normally forget about. So they don't often have humor in their lesson. They don't often have an activity of some kind. They don't have movement of some kind. They don't have, the right kind of questions. And AI could provide that and make better and better lessons for teachers to give.
Absolutely, because those things are known. It's probably been in the web for a while, and ChatGPT was learning on it. So I think it's a great use case you mentioned. Like, here's a curriculum that I just wrote. Can you please make it better in terms of hot cognition or XYZ? Where you pick the tool, and it'll probably rewrite it in a couple of ways. Now, would it be perfect? Maybe right away, maybe not. But you'll see a couple of ideas that are relevant, and you can pick them into your classroom right away, and it'll be probably very efficient, is my guess, at doing that for you.
Well, I would think that it could produce a lesson much faster than I could produce it. I could go back then and critique it and probably make it better. But speed is also important. Yeah.
Let me ask you one final question, Ofer and Anabel. So I heard you mentioning somehow empathy. We talk about effort and some also motivation. So I'd like to ask you, what is your best emotional intelligence competency that you think for you is the most relevant in using artificial intelligence? And if you could recommend one skill, one emotional intelligence skill to a student, what kind of competency you would recommend?
Oh, Larry, I find this a trick question. I really do.
We didn't agree on this. But I wanted really, I'd like to ask you this.
Well, I find it a trick question because obviously I was involved in creating those 8 competencies, and my favorite is optimism. So I want AI to answer with hope for the world. I think that's critically important. But I also want AI to answer with consequential thinking about the pros and the cons. And I also want AI to be sure that it practices empathy. So, Ilaria, I can't pick just one. I can't.
Choice, Anabel, choice is the second area of our model. We absolutely need to use optimism and pick some of them at least. But
right. So now we'll
all
put
of them
Ofer.
maybe.
Yeah, we'll put Ofer on the spot and ask him.
No, I mean, I was gonna say, after you said your first few words, that you stole mine. Mine was gonna be optimism, but then you said, no, I want all of them. And the reason I choose optimism, because I mean I'm gonna also try to summarize, get back to my first point. It's like, I think if I want to make a kind of a outgoing statement for this great panel, is like, AI is here to help you. Use it wisely, teach others to use it wisely, and so it helps you be a better person in the world. And that fuels my optimism for all of us to be better citizens, and help prevent the misuse of AI for bad actors. So that'll be my point of view.
Thank you.
I would just like to close by thanking Ofer. Ofer, I was about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen. But I want to tell you that, and I hope some of our audience ends up feeling this way as well. I have been so energized. I've got 50 more questions. I want to have 50 more conversations about this topic. I want to think of 50 more ways that AI can get involved in emotional intelligence and in the classroom and in et cetera. So I am all energized to do more. And I think maybe that's the important piece as well. We need to open the door to AI. We don't need to slam the door to AI, and find out how it can help us accomplish the multiple tasks that are in the world today, and what kind of contribution can we make to solving those problems.
Can't agree
And
more.
we,
Thank
with
you, Anabel.
Anabel, exactly. And Anabel, we thought together, we agreed that maybe in 2024 we can have a series of panels about artificial intelligence impacting different domains. So Ofer, you are already invited to join. Maybe we can, of
Thank you.
course, and maybe having other experts and just sharing ideas around artificial intelligence in business, artificial intelligence in research, or with all the possible ideas that we have, all the impacts that artificial intelligence has in our life. This would be fantastic. So let's stay open to new opportunities in 2024.
So Ofer, can we continue to feed Ask Anabel so that it can become wiser and wiser and wiser? I would love that.
Yes. Whenever you have more books you write, more articles you create, more speeches you give, just send them my way, and I'll keep putting this in. No problem.
All right. In the meantime, I am sending both of you love and hugs.
Thank you.
It was great to interact
you.
today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilaria, for hosting us today.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful, very, very inspiring also. I learned a lot from you both. I hope our audience too. And so thank you, everyone, and see you in 2024 with more artificial intelligence, let's say.
All right.
Thank you.
Holidays,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone. Happy holidays,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.